Welcome to Entrepreneurs International Network, where entrepreneurs learn, network, and grow. I'm Roger Killen, the organizer. Today, Michelle Abraham is going to be training us on how to become a profitable podcast guest. Michelle, I have got 3 questions for you. What is the best decision that you have ever made?
Roger, and it's so great to be here, you guys. I'm really excited about this today. So the best decision I've ever made is to say yes and figure it out after. So say yes to opportunities, yes to things that people ask you to do, say yes to, opening a business, those kind of things. So say yes. And if you don't know how to do what it is, figure it out later.
Hey, just say yes. All right, I'll remember that. Michelle, may I borrow $1 million?
Well, it was more like say yes to adventures and things like that.
Okay. Question number.
But yes, Roger, you can borrow $1 million. Just means I need to make 5 first.
All right. Let's see if we can make that happen. Michelle, what's the biggest challenge you've had to overcome?
Oh, that's a good one. I think that my biggest challenge I've had to overcome is growing up in a household where I had a very entrepreneurial father. It became a running joke as that what business he was running this year, and my family went through 2 bankruptcies, and, I saw the stress that it caused. But having an entrepreneurial father was really inspiring, yet I had to overcome some definite money issues and definite fear of failure before I could get any success in my business. So doing some mind work and some work on my belief system was really important to the success I have today.
Okay. Yeah, that's a biggie, overcoming fear. Now, Michelle's business is called Amplify You. So this question is about Amplify You. Michelle, if you were to launch Amplify You all over again, what is the very first thing that you would do?
Great question. The very first thing I would do is launch a podcast. And then go and be a guest on as many podcasts as I can. So it took me a little while. You'll hear my story later on tonight to actually launch my own show. I was already helping others before I had my own show. So I would have launched my podcast sooner if I started today.
Why am I not surprised at that answer? Participants, for you, please turn on your video. It's very lonely for Michelle to be speaking to little black rectangles. So it's infinitely more interesting for her to see how you react to what she has to say. So please, if you can, turn on your video. Stay muted. And if you have questions, type them into the chat. I'll pose them to Michelle during her talk in batches. Rest assured, all your questions will get answered if we do it this way. Now, you're going to be sent a link to the recording of Michelle's workshop in a few hours, but nevertheless, I encourage you to take notes, because the very act of taking notes is going to increase what you absorb by as much as 25 to 35%. Michelle, are you ready to knock our socks off?
Ready to rock and roll, Roger.
And you take it away. The stage is all yours.
Here we go, guys. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. This is going to be super fun. So we're talking about becoming a profitable podcast guest. Yes, this is something, it is a huge topic. And, I was speaking with Roger just before tonight. Something that is interesting about what's happening right now in the world. Over the last year and a half, a lot of businesses have suffered, and there's been a lot of slowing down in businesses. But podcasting has been the one vehicle that a lot of businesses, while they were closed or on pause, people have turned to podcasting to be able to reach their customers still in a way that they can still connect while we were isolated at home. So it's been a very interesting space to be in. There's so many more people. And, you know, you may think that podcasting now is a term that we hear at home and everywhere we go, but it's actually still, and it's very much in its infancy stages. It's just getting started. Podcasting's not going anywhere. So just want you to know that before we get started tonight. So we're going to be talking about podcast guesting, and I'm ready to roll. So we're going to talk a little bit, what is podcasting in general, what is a little bit about my story and how it relates to what we're going to talk about today. Then you're going to learn where podcasters look for guests. You're going to learn the get noticed formula that helps us get on more shows. And you're going to learn the elements that you needed on a speaker sheet. And what is a speaker sheet? And do you really need one? And what are the components of it? And then you're going to learn how not to pitch yourself to podcasts, because I've been on the receiving end of so many. I can tell you some things not to do that's going to really save you a lot in the end. And then we're going to look about how to position yourself as a sought after guest. Are you guys ready? If you're ready, say yes in the chat. Let's roll on this. Okay, my hope is that actually at the end of this interview, or at the end of this training, you're going to have enough information that you can go and get yourself booked on 5 shows next week. Okay, does that sound good to everybody? Thumbs up if that's a good sign. All right. And we want you to be able to have a lot of fun doing it too. Okay, so why you want to pay attention to podcasting right now? Podcasting we're in a time in our world right now where podcasting is allowing us to get someone's time and attention. So time and attention are our most valuable assets. There is no other platform, I guarantee right now, that is allowing you to access your listeners for as long as podcasting does. And one of my favorite things, I'm just going to tell you, my favorite trick off the top of this is being a guest on podcasts, because at the end of the day, when everyone's social media posts go by in the scrolls, when they disappear in the newspaper the next day, if you're on the news, it's often 20 minutes. The podcasting, if you're interviewed on a podcast, your information, your interview stays out there working for you 24/7. There is people listening to shows on all sorts of platforms all day, every day, and your message is out there working for you. How cool is that? I think that's pretty amazing. I'm pretty passionate about that subject. It is awesome. So even just look at these stats here. Facebook, you get 18.2 seconds of someone's time. YouTube, you get 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Instagram, 26 seconds or less. Then they're gone. Podcasting, this statistic is over a couple years old, but it's still relevant because we can see in the analytics on iTunes from all my clients' shows, people still listen to about 20 minutes of a show. So what are people doing in that 20-minute time? They're walking their dog, they're going to the gym, they're driving their car, they're commuting, they're cooking dinner, they're doing something while listening. And this is why podcasting is so valuable. People can take you with them wherever they're going, which is why your message then gets to go with them. And I absolutely love this fact, because podcasting is just rocking it for sharing your message to the world. And for those of you that want to make a big impact in the world, and those of you that are out here to share your message with the world, this is the vehicle that is going to do it. Did you know Google Podcasts are ranking podcasts higher than YouTube videos? This is just the beginning. So a little bit of backstory about SEO, search engine optimization. Right now it's picking up all the written stuff and all the show notes from the podcast that you're on. But pretty soon that is actually going to change, and it's going to be picking up your voice too. So anyone who has a podcast or is on podcasts as a guest, your searchable content is just going to 10x. So you're going to have a lot more ability to be searched. You're going to show up more. And because your content is out there in the written word and in the verbal audio way as well. Okay, so you're in the right company. Our team has launched over 200 podcasts in the last 3 years. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got started in podcasting as a podcast listener, then as a podcast guest, and then as a host, and now as a podcast agency. So we've launched over 200 podcasts Over the last 3 years, we also manage people to go on to podcasts. So it's a service we offer. We also help people launch shows and manage them. So we do all sorts of things in the podcasting space. 2 years in a row, my podcast, Amplify You, has been number 15 of the top 50 moms in podcasting, voted by Podcast Magazine, which is pretty cool. But what's even more cool about that is that I have 3, 4, 5 clients that are in the top 50 as well, which is really exciting to me. Not just about me, but about all of our clients. I think it's really cool. Kevin Harrington says Amplify is North America's top podcast management company. And we won last year, 2 years ago, we won Entrepreneur of the Year from Business from the Heart. And then we just got nominated for an award yesterday, which was People's Choice Award by Business from the Heart as well. So super exciting. But that's not what we're here about today. Just wanted to show you that you're in some good hands and that we've been in the podcasting space. Our business has really only been alive for 3 years, but I've been working in podcasting stuff. I started the Vancouver Podcast Network, in 2012. That's when I started dabbling in podcasting, but I officially started Amplify You about 3 years ago. All right, so who wants to be a profitable podcast guest? Say yes in the chat or raise your hands. I can only see a few of you because there's a lot of you, but you can say yes in the chat if you like. All right, I'm glad everyone wants to be a profitable podcast guest. So what does that mean? What are the opportunities in the podcast space right now? So there's really 3 different opportunities we've kind of identified. You can be a podcast guest, you could be a podcast host, which means you have your own show, or you could be a podcast manager, which is what our team does. So what does it mean to be a podcast guest? This is me. I flew all the way down to San Diego to be on this podcast, actually. They record live in San Diego. This is on Reinvention Radio. And it was a lot of fun. Most podcasts, although you don't have to fly across the country to go to record. Most podcasts are recorded on Zoom, so which means that you can do a lot of recordings right from your home. And being a podcast guest, we're going to talk about that later, but it's pretty awesome. You show up to talk, someone else has the audience, and your job is to deliver tons of value. Number 2, being a podcast host, which I saw earlier in the chat that a lot of you are. So if you're the host, this is awesome because not only do you get to be positioned as the expert, showcase your expertise, share your content, and it gets to open up doors for you. I love the ability to open up doors with relationship building, reaching out to people I want to get to know better, inviting them on my podcast. It's one of the best needle movers in a business. So being a host is awesome. You get to invite guests on, share your own content, or you can go on as be a guest as well. So often our podcast hosts are also podcast guests. And number 3 is podcast management. So once you launch your show, there's a lot of editing and social media stuff and graphics and things that you need to take care of. Well, we have a team that takes care of that for you. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Which one are you? Are you a 1, are you a 2, or a 3? 1 was a podcast guest, 2 is a host, or 3 was a podcast manager. Put in the chat, which one are you? So Amplify You, we do podcast management done for you. You record, we let you do and we'll do the rest. We like to keep our podcasts hosts in the content creation zone where we provide a team that does the rest. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're going to get on to the guesting. We're going to talk about being a podcast guest. So if you've never been a podcast guest before, guess what? That's totally fine. If you have a story to share, which we all do, then you're going to make a great podcast guest. So what podcasters are listening for? What are they looking for? They're looking for someone to come on and share some valuable information. Have you all overcome something in your life? Put up your hand. I know you guys all have overcome something in your life. Have you achieved something? Have you grown in some way? Have you gone somewhere, done something that others are looking to achieve? Then you're going to be a great podcast guest. You just have to find the right show to get on. All right, so the benefits of being a podcast guest is really cool. So you get to be the person that shows up and delivers awesome content share your message with the world through the podcast, and you get to be put on this pedestal as a guest. Okay, so the podcast host's job is to make you look really good, because then in return, you make them look really good by having you on, right? You're going to deliver awesome content to their audience. You're going to help their audience solve a problem that they have. And it's pretty easy. You just show up, the guest asks you all the questions, and that interview stays there forever. You can also take that interview and use it in your own content. You can put it on your website. You can share it on your social media. And it's pretty good. It gives you that positioning of an expert because you've been asked to share your message. It's pretty cool. So what is the needle mover though, and how you become a profitable podcaster, is what happens before and after the recording. Okay, so oftentimes you come on, you bring a guest on, we'll start chatting, start getting to know each other. I'll interview the guest. After the show goes, wow, the guest said so many great things. I'll end up hiring them, or they'll hire me, or we'll make a connection call to say, okay, let's collaborate on this afterwards, or I have 2 other people that I think that you should go on their podcast, or, there's all this connection that happens before and after the interview that is really valuable. One of the things that I love using my podcast, sorry, I mentioned it a few minutes ago, but I just wanted to reiterate the strategy, is say there's somebody out there in my space that I don't really have any other reason to connect to or reach out to. I use my podcast as an invitation to lead with service. I get to serve them and say, okay, I would love to invite you to come on my podcast. I've built a big audience here. Come on and share your message and I'll promote you. That's a very big honor for them to come on. So it gives me a way to get in and invite someone to be on the show. So we're flipping it around. We're talking about being a guest today. So think of what the host wants out of you as a guest. Okay, so your host wants great content, you to deliver great things, to promote the show, to share with your audience. And in return, you get to be that expert. So here's some more things that it can do for you. It'll help you share your story with more people. Like I mentioned before, it helps you position yourself as an expert, creates that connection with the host and the audience, and it gives people that like, know, and trust factor. If you think about where people are listening to podcasts, they listen to them in their ears, in their earbuds, which is in their head. That is a very sacred place to be. So you have to treat what you say wisely, because you're literally in their head. So what it shows is that by listening, by the audio content, it makes that like, know, and trust factor. It amplifies it a lot, so that when you're speaking and you're sharing something, and then you offer people to come and join you in the conversation, that is a quick way for people to then move from listening to you to then working with you. So what do I mean by joining in the conversation? Well, as a podcast listener, they're listening to you talk and they're like, oh, yes, they're getting to know you. They're getting to know you. You feel like you can, as a listener, I feel like I could run up and give a podcast host a hug because I know them so well, listening to their show, but they don't know me at all. So for a podcast host to then offer you to, hey, come and join in the conversation, come into our podcast, come into our Facebook group. That's something that you as a guest, you want to offer people to come and work with you. What's the next step of coming to work with you? So that's the one tip I want to leave you with right now is make sure you have somewhere when you go on and be a guest on a show for people to go and connect with you after. So that would be like leading them to a website where they can get a free gift. That would be bringing them into a Facebook group. That would be giving them a free consultation or something. But keep in mind, what do you want to give the audience so that it can be a two-way conversation? Because that's what the podcast listener wants.
Michelle, I've got a small accumulation of questions. Are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, number 1 from Bhavna. What are some of the possible portals and sites to explore opportunities for being a podcast guest?
Ooh, great question. I'm going to give you a list of 7 of them coming up soon.
Okay, next question. Next question. Should the host provide the questions ahead of time for the guest to prepare?
That's a great question. It depends on the show. I do not ever want to give my guests questions because it might change what they would say. As a guest, I also, sometimes it's nice to know roughly what you talk about, but I also want to be able to talk about what I need to talk about, which we'll talk about in the super guest formula, what I need to talk about in order to move you through my agenda to get you to come and join my opt-in or free gift. Do you see what I mean?
Question from Ashok. Where are these interviews available for somebody to download and listen? I think he's asked. Okay, back over to you.
Yep, great question. Yeah. So podcast interviews are on lots of different platforms. You can, if you're looking for a specific podcast, you can Google the podcast name and it'll show up on all the different platforms they're on. Some of the popular places to look for podcasts, if you're an Apple user, would be iTunes. That's the #1 platform. Spotify would be #2. #3 would be iHeartRadio. 4 would be Google Podcasts. Those are 4 places that you can go and listen to podcasts. Often comes to your phone on an app. There's lots of different podcast apps. In fact, all of our shows that we launch get on about 30 plus platforms. So every time they publish a show, it automatically goes to 30 platforms.
Question from Valerie. What about cover art to cross promote?
Yeah, so a host should provide some sort of social media content, like a cover art with a photo or something for the guest to promote. The idea is that you put the guest picture on it with your podcast so that the guest feels great about promoting it. We do something called an audiogram, which is an audio clip with an image on it together. And it's a clip of the guest saying something great. If you make the podcast about, if the host makes the podcast about the guest, then the guest will share, right? And so it's our job after we've been on someone's show, they've invited us on, then to share it with other people and link to it.
Second question from Ashok. How long should the podcast remain on the platform for download?
Oh, it stays there forever until the podcast host decides to close the show. So my friend Scott, he's got podcasts on weight loss that he started in 2001, and he still gets emails about how it changed people's lives today. So you can keep that podcast episode there as long as the podcast host is still doing the show. And even if they stop doing the show, the platforms will keep the podcast there for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. No further questions. Back to you, Michelle.
Awesome. So I want to start a little bit, just share a tiny little bit about, I've got lots of content to share tonight, but I want to share a little bit about how my story started and how I got into podcasting. So I was with my friends. I moved to Switzerland to be a nanny and au pair after high school, and it was a lot of fun. We had a great year, and 2 of my friends wanted to come meet me in Switzerland, and we backpacked through Europe for the summer. One of my friends that was with us, she was really shy in high school and kind of, she was like, we called her an old soul. She was really wise and amazing, but she just didn't quite fit in with everyone. And when we were backpacking that summer, she really came alive, and really we got to know her, and really she became such an amazing woman. And we were in the south of France one night, and my friend and I, we'd all gone out for dinner one night. And I decided I wanted to go back to the hostel a little bit early. So did my other friend. And so we left this friend with some other people we had met traveling. We headed back to the hostel, went to bed. 2:00 in the morning, got a knock on the door. Madame, there's been an accident. So we open the door. It's the hostel staff saying, there's been an accident. You need to go to the hospital. So my friend and I go to the hospital, and we find out that our friend has been killed by a train. So she was walking home from where we left them, and her and this friend decided to walk through the tunnel on the way home. He went one way, she went the other. She was killed by a train. I'm telling you this story because it's kind of what changed my life. And this is why when Roger asked me what my favorite, what is something that I forget what the question was. When Roger asked me at the beginning today, my answer was say yes. And this is where the say yes comes from. So from this moment forward, my life changed. And I knew that you don't know how long you have to live. And you know that I know that she had a message. She had this whole life that she was going to live. It got taken from her very early. So I decided that this is my way of carrying her spirit on, is that I want to help as many people get their message out. We're all here on this earth to share a message. And as soon as I started sharing that with people, more and more people come into my life that are here to make a difference and make an impact and want to share their story. I know we all have a story. And so sharing that story is so important. And it's what made me say yes to all the adventure and all the things in the last 25 years since that accident. And so it's why I do what I do today. But really where the podcasting started for me, and I realized that podcasting was a vehicle for people to get their story out. And as soon as I figured that out, I didn't initially clue in that that's why I was so attracted to podcasting, but I knew there was something about podcasting that was really going to make a difference in this world. So when I became a new mom, this little guy came along and he was awesome, but I was a busy entrepreneur before he came along. I had a fitness studio in Vancouver. And when I became a new mom, I loved playing on the floor with him, but my business brain was going crazy. I was like going to mush. I couldn't think anymore. And I was like, this is great, but I'm like, why am I not so happy? And I think really looking back on it now, turning to podcasts really helped me get out of postpartum depression. So what happened, I was playing on the floor one day with him, turned around and looked, turned on our Apple TV, there's this podcasting app here. Anyone seen this purple app before? I bet you've seen it in a few places now. So this purple app was on my TV. This was back in 2012. And I turned it on and I turned on this show called The Eventual Millionaire by Jamie Tardy. And that podcast is still on today. I listened to every episode as a listener that she had created. And I got so excited every Monday when there was a new show coming out. I put my earbuds in my ear, put my son in the stroller, we'd go for a walk. It started making me feel like my brain was coming back to life again, like I was having some motivation, some inspiration to get back into business, get back into work. And so then I noticed it was in my car. I had a new car at the time. This purple app, hey, it's in my car too. So not only can I listen to podcasts while playing with my son, I'm taking him for a walk, well, now we're driving. And so that really took me on a whole other adventure. I love podcasting so much that I started learning everything I could do about podcasting. Started the Vancouver Podcast Network group, started gathering people who were interested in podcasting. We started launching some shows. Meanwhile, I was thinking like, I really want to have a podcast, but I don't know what to podcast about. And went through all the fears that I see our clients going through now. Fear of being heard, fear of visibility, fear of success, fear of technology, all those things. So meanwhile, I kept trekking along, helping other people. I launched my podcast business, Amplify You, the same year that we sold our house, moved to the Sunshine Coast, which is a vacation area in BC for those of you that are out of town. My husband and I decided to buy an RV, take our family on a 5-month trip around North America in our RV when my kids were 2 and 4. And that's how Amplify You was born, because I could take this business and do it on the road. I saw the value in podcasting and helping people share their message while we were creating this incredible story of what we were doing with our lives. We now live on a lake where we have to take a boat to get to our car, and it's pretty fun. But it all started with this RV trip that we took, and it was so awesome. But it all comes back down to podcasting and sharing your message, and then saying yes to adventure and saying yes to these experiences, because you don't know how long you have here. This is where we live now, on a lake, and this is my family. So we've had a lot of fun the last few years living over there. And these are all the amazing people that we get to help share their message with. And I share with this to you because we're talking about podcast guesting tonight. This is relevant because being a podcast guest, you have the opportunity to change people's lives with your message and with your story. And all these podcast hosts, they want to share their message too. They want to be the host, but they also want to share your message. So there are so many podcasts out there right now in the world. When you Google my podcast, for some reason, we come up right next to Tony Robbins all the time. And I don't know why, but it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice being right up there next to the big guy, Tony Robbins. And in April of 2020, there was 1 million podcasts out there. When I started back in 2012, 2013, looking at podcasts, there was about 100,000 podcasts. That's how much has grown in the last 10 years. So in April 2021, there was 2.4 million podcasts. Look at this number, 1.4 million podcasts. That's how busy we were last year with helping podcasts launch. There's so many more podcasts out there, but what that means is that there's so many more listeners now. So as a podcast guest, you have the opportunity to get on so many new shows. So podcast listeners are affluent, loyal, and educated. They listen to 80% of your episode, most of the episodes. So that's great. Your content's going to be heard if you go on there. So this is Steve Wolsche-Hume's podcast magazine now, but how he started was he was a guest on 2 shows a week for a year to promote his book, and that landed him an extra 6 figures in his business. So he had a funnel from here, so it's called the funnel now, but he had a way for you to connect with him, which is through his book from the podcast interview. And Janice, one of our clients, she got a huge speaking gig at a national conference. From actually being on a podcast. She has her own podcast too, but a guest that came on her show referred her to go and be a guest on someone else's show that then booked her on a huge conference in front of 40,000 people. So I'm going to get to the juicy part now, the 5 things that you need to be a profitable guest. Roger, are there any questions? Did you want me, this is a good place to pause here.
Yes, one question. Do you like to put your podcast on YouTube as a video version? Do you do both audio and video versions?
Yeah, so traditionally podcasts are just audio, but as things are growing and there's so many different channels, why not start with content, all the content? So start in video. We record in video. We take a piece of the video, which we've structured like a 5 to 6 minute chunk, and then we put that on YouTube. Then we publish the audio, we turn it into a blog, cut it up for social media, put audiograms and videograms on social media, images on social media, and then we have all of our content for social media. So one mistake people have done is think about podcasting. This is from a host perspective, but thinking of podcasting as another thing we have to do for social media. It actually should be the one thing you do for all the content in your business that you get everything else from. And that's whether you're being a guest or a host. It's easier if you're a host because you have control of all the content. If you're a guest, you can go and be a guest on different shows and still use that content. Hope that makes sense.
Is podcasting used just for learning and entertainment, or can it be used to make money too?
Yes. So there's a couple of different podcasting spaces out there. There's shows that are sports. There's shows that have scripts and everything that are made by big companies. There's shows that have paid actors on it. And there's shows in the space that we work on are entrepreneurs who have a program or service they want to sell. They use a podcast as a vehicle to get more leads into their business.
Is podcasting used what's the first step if you'd like to start a podcast from Katsumi?
Yeah, if you'd like to start a podcast, I would say the first thing you need to do is have a Zoom account, have a computer, and grab a microphone. And a microphone could be $150. I use the Blue Yeti. You can get it on Amazon.
No further questions. Back to you, Michelle.
All right. So the 5 elements you need to do to be a profitable guest is one, a speaker sheet. So you don't necessarily need one of these, but what you need is somewhere that you have all your content of what you talk about. So these are the elements of the podcast, of the speaker sheet you need. You need to say, what are your topics? You need to have some testimonials on there. It's nice to have some accolades on there, or so some things like if you've won an award or if you've been seen on Fox News or whatever, have those things on there too. And then what your core message is. So the things that you speak at and your contact information. So those are the things that you need to have. If you can put them all together, this speaker sheet. Now, a couple of things I would change with it. I've updated mine a little bit and I need to update this here, but I would make this, the media topics a little bit bigger, right? to make sure that you have all the ingredients. So the ingredients for the speaker sheet, again, is your contact information, some testimonials, where you've been seen, or some awards, or, you know, if you, or other shows that you've been on is good. And then what your main topics are. And a picture of you, that's important.
Randall is asking, what if you have not had any media exposure yet?
Then no problem. Focus on some testimonials, focus on your content, what you can do for the host and what you can do for the show. Focus on your content and add some more pictures in.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Until you get on those other shows, then you can add those images in. Number 2 is do some research before you go. So now someone was asking, what are some places, like how do you know what shows to be on, what shows that you want to get on? So for those of you who stay till the end here, which I know you guys all will, and if you want to join us in what I'm going to talk about later, then I'm going to show you some really ninja. I'm going to give you this really amazing website that you can go and find all sorts of shows on. It's called Listen Notes. Okay, and they're going to teach you how to use it later, but this is what I'm going to tell you. Go to Listen Notes and you can search any topic you want. You can find out all the information about all the podcasts that are around your topic. So as a guest, you need to do some ninja research. So your ninja research is 1, go to Listen Notes and put your topic in and see what comes up. If there's somebody else that speaks on the same kind of topic as you, go and put their name in there too and see what shows they've been on. Those are really good ways of finding shows that would be a good fit for you as a guest. What you're looking for is not these shows below. So these shows here that I'm showing you, it's like Gary Vee and Rachel Hollis and Tim Ferriss, Amy Porterfield, Jenna Kutcher. These are very high level shows. They book years in advance and they have thousands and probably millions of downloads. Most of them never have guests on their show. And if they do, very few guests get on. So these are not the shows that you want to look for. So this is like specifically if you're an entrepreneur. So you want to look for the shows that have, you know, a listen score. When you go to Listen Notes, it has scores. You want to show the shows that are in like the 5 to 10% range of the top shows. Those are a good place to start. You know, they're going to have some downloads. They have some traction, but they're a little bit more accessible than some of the big shows.
Michelle, could you repeat the name of that site? People are not hearing your second word.
Sure. Listen Notes.
LISTEN, new word, NOTES.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you Google those 2 words, it will come up with the website, which is listennotes.com. Yes, hopefully you guys got that.
You ready for a few quick questions?
Sure.
How do you find your listen score?
Yeah, so if you have, is this someone who has a show that's asking that?
It's Valerie.
Yeah, she has a show. I remember her saying at the beginning. So yeah, Valerie, if you want to see your listen score, type your show name into the search and it'll tell you what the score is. Yeah, so all the shows that we work with are in like the top 10% of all shows out there. And that's in the top 10% of 2.4 million shows active.
Jason wants to know if your TV show can also be a podcast.
Absolutely. So if the TV show, we would just take the audio and then promote it. You know, if you have a video show already, like a YouTube channel or a TV show, absolutely. All you got to do is take the audio out from it. That's something our team can do for you if you don't want to do it yourself. Take the audio out and publish it. Then you get it on 30 more platforms, which have millions and millions of listeners. So it would be silly not to. You already have all the content and everything you need for a podcast.
Question from Gloria. Do the testimonials need to be related to your speaking or can they be about your services?
They can be, ideally, they'll want them to be about either you podcast guesting or you're speaking eventually. But in the beginning, just whatever testimonial you'll have is great.
No further questions. Back to you, Michelle.
Okay, awesome. So moving along, number 3 is the get noticed formula. So when you see a show that you think you'd be a great fit for, you've listened to the show, or you see a show that you think you'd be a great fit for, you're like, okay, I want to be on that show. Now what do? This is the get noticed formula. So this came from me being pitched on a lot of shows by guests that clearly didn't have any idea what my show was about. Didn't take the time to listen, didn't take the time to even read what it's about, but they wanted to get on the show and it was all about their agenda. So as a podcast guest, this is one of the most important things I'm going to share with you tonight. You need to make you getting on that show all about the host and their audience, not about you. Has nothing to do with you. You might be the coolest, smartest person out there, but if you say, hey, I'm the coolest, smartest person out there, put me on your show, they'll probably be like, well, what's that going to do for my audience? Okay, so a host has worked very hard to build this audience. You need to really go in there and show them why your message would be so valuable for their audience to hear. Okay, so this is where the get noticed formula is fun. First thing you're going to do is go and listen to their show. And there's a couple of reasons you want to listen to a show. First of all, if you don't listen to the show and you go on a show, and it's the wrong fit, or they swear and you don't like swearing, or they say things that you're like not comfortable with, that's going to be very awkward. Number two, they may ask a question on every single show. And if you weren't prepared for that, like I know a lot of shows ask the same question every show, like, what's your favorite book? And if you don't know what your favorite book is, like that's going to kind of look bad on you. So be prepared by going to listen to a show. Okay. So like I wouldn't come on here first without having been to an event first. Come to an event, listen, learn, and then show, and then come to speak at it, right? So go and subscribe to their channel, subscribe to their show, download their show, listen to it, and then give them a really nice review. Hey, podcast host, absolutely loved what you said in this episode about XYZ. Really made me start thinking about this, or like it really inspired me, or this episode really helped me with. Those kind of reviews are going to be great. Guess what? Every single podcast host looks at their reviews. So you want to go and give a review. Make sure your Apple ID has your name on it though, okay? Because this is the next part. Then you're going to go follow them on social media. Now, for those of you that are like, that sounds like a lot of work to do all this stuff. This in total takes about 20 minutes of your time. Listen to at least 20 minutes of the episode, go and give the review and do the other things in about 20 minutes. You can do the other things while you're listening to the show. Okay? Go and follow them, then start leaving some comments. Now, this is the part that takes a few days. So go engage and leave some comments, maybe once a week or every couple of days for a few weeks, because they're going to start to notice your name. Believe me, they all watch their social media. They all watch their reviews. This is going to be helpful. Okay, so then once you're engaged with their social media, you might notice they love dogs. So then when you're about to approach them, you can mention something about dogs. Oh, I see we have the same kind of dog. You're building rapport and you're building a connection with them. Okay, so this is the get noticed formula, 4 parts to it. Listen, subscribe, review, follow, engage. Okay. So subscribe, leave a review, follow, engage. You guys got it? Thumbs up. It's an easy one, but these 4 steps alone are going to set you apart from 99% of the guests out there, or 99% of the people trying to be guests out there.
Time for a question.
Sure.
Shakita wants to know, how do I find the right guest for my podcast?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So if you're a host and you're looking for a guest, so in my host mind, I'm thinking about my audience. So my audience, and also thinking about what I do. What's my purpose of having a podcast? So at Amplify, I'll just share my podcast has 2 different parts. 1, I interview experts who can help podcasters grow their show. 2, I interview other podcasters called Behind the Mic, so I can understand how they're running their show, what they're doing, what was their success, what are some things they struggle with, so that we can either have a conversation before or after about working with them, or they were our clients and they give us a really great testimonial, usually on the air. So I have 2 different reasons I do those 2 shows. So what's your goal with your podcast? So depending on what your goal with your podcast is, depends on what kind of guests you want to bring. So I look for other podcasters to be guests, and I look for someone like Roger who has something that he does that's really helpful for my audience. So if podcaster, a lot of times they want to speak, so they need to learn some speaking skills. That would be a really good fit. So that was a good fit for a guest on my show. Oftentimes they have book coaches, because writing a book is a great way for podcasters to get more exposure. So think about it in what's your goal with your podcast.
Candace wants to know, how do you find podcasts that talk about something close to what your message is?
Good. So go to that website I gave you guys a few minutes ago, listennotes.com, and put your topic in there. So if you're a parenting coach, you can go in there and type, kids behavior, right? And you'll see all the shows that talk about kids behavior on there. So that will give you a good idea on where to go.
Candace is an addictions coach.
Perfect. So I would go in there and type in addictions, and you can see some things that pop up, or something that's like adjacent to it. So like I said, I look for like book coaches or speaker coaches that are a really good fit for what I do, because they speak to the same audience as me, but they offer different things. Does that make sense? So if you're an addictions coach, Candace, you want to look for someone else that works with people in addictions, but don't do exactly what you do, but they're speaking to the same audience.
No further questions.
Okay, so the superstar guest formula is what you're going to say to lead the audience to then coming to get to know and like trust you more, and getting on your email list, or working with you, or coming into a Facebook group. So as a guest, and you're going to go on a show, you want to tell your story. The highs and lows and the things that you overcame should be usually what the problem is that the listeners have. Does that make sense? I know I said that really fast. So when you're going on a show, if I'm going on a show talking about my story, and I say we'll use the parenting podcast as the example again. So if I'm a parenting coach and I'm going on to a show that's for parents, they're the audience, and I talk about my story where I used to yell a lot as a parent, and I'm just getting this as an example. And now I have a program that helps you stop yelling as a parent. I'm speaking to the parents in the audience of the show. Maybe that's their problem too. And so I want to share my story about how I was a yelling parent, and maybe they can really relate to that. Right? So the more of you that you show and your story that you share, the more relatable you are. So if you come on and be like, I'm a doctor with a PhD and this is, and you have these credentials, and you're way up here, they can't relate to you. So bring it down to relate to the audience. So you say the struggles that you're also, the struggles you have too. Like I said earlier, I was fearful of my voice. I was fearful of the technology and being heard and being seen. And that took me a long time to get over that, to get to my podcast. And now I see my clients doing the same things, but now I can help them through it because I've been through that. Okay, so you really want to share your message in that way that leads them to be like, oh, I resonate with you. And so sometimes it's interesting, this guessing thing. So I have some clients that are like, I want to get on the top podcast shows, and I want to be a guest, and I want to be a guest on the top shows out here. Well, being a guest on the top shows aren't necessarily the best way for you to get the most exposure. It's actually sometimes the shows that have a little bit less followers that maybe are more resonate with your message, and vice versa. Having a podcast and having big names on your show isn't necessarily going to be the best fit for your show, because those bigger names might say the same thing on every show, right? And your audience can't relate. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, good. Awesome. Okay, so superstar guest formula is all about how you move through. So you want to have your story in mind. You want to have some myths maybe about your topic, and have some takeaways, the key messages, and have those written out so you can speak in chunks. No matter what question the host asks you, you can answer in those succinct media bites, right? For those of you that have heard the word media bites before, it's speaking in little chunks of content that make it easier for you to, so the media likes to grab those pieces of content and publish them, right? So speaking in those succinct little messages is really great. Awesome. Okay, we're almost there. here, guys, if you'd like, you can take a screenshot of the show. Here's some places that you can go and look for podcast guests. Okay, so our Facebook group is on there, which is in that link there. Interviewguestdirectory.com is another one. Radio guest list. These are all places that tons of shows are listed on. I'm going to show you on the next page because there's some more on this one. This is one of my favorite ones here. It is called podcastguest.com, the one on the very bottom here. So that one actually sends out an email every week if you get onto their list, where it showcases 10 shows that you can go and apply to be a guest on. And so it's really great how you can just go ahead and be a guest, apply to be a guest on any of those shows. They have a form that you fill out and then they'll contact you. So listing yourself as a guest on some of these, podmatch.com is a great one. There's another one called Podbooker that I really like, podbooker.com. Those are two newer ones that are really good as well. We also have something at Amplify called Connect and Collaborate. It's free. It's every Wednesday. There's one tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Join us for that. It's free. You come and you meet podcasters, meet guests, and like oftentimes matches are made like that as well. So you come on and you get to introduce yourself to everybody and you will go in breakout rooms. So if you don't meet someone that can connect you on a show, oftentimes they'll connect you with somebody else that can book you on their show. Okay, so here's Ryan. He's one of our podcasters. He had 250,000 downloads and a sold out coaching program with a wait list. That was from having a podcast. So that was him as a host. Emily says podcasting is #1 ROI in our business. So she was going on other shows, being a guest, leading them back to her show, booking calls, booking direct messages. She was getting tons of clients that her schedule also got booked up. So just to show you a couple of people that we have worked with. So did we cover all this? Told you about my story, told you about what we're going to learn today. Talked about podcasters looking for guests. We talked about the get notice formula, all the elements you need on the speaker sheet, how not to pitch yourself, don't make it all about you, and how to position yourself as a sought after guest. 2 thumbs up, guys, if you learned something today and you're excited about podcast guesting. Awesome. So everyone has a story. I know you guys have a story. You have a story in you that needs to be shared with the world. If you can impact one person with your message, you're doing your job. It doesn't matter what your story is, but someone needs to hear it. I feel like that. My friend Cecilia, she didn't get to share her message, but her message is sure impacting a lot of people. So what is your story? What is your message? What are you going to take and share on other people's platforms that are going to make an impact in people's lives and help draw them back into working with you, collaborating with you, growing your business? Think about it. What is it? And I invite you guys to come and join us for the podcast guest formula. Think of what we just went through tonight, but deeper dive. We'll give you some templates. We'll give you some tools. We'll give you some coaching. Okay. You get to be listed, and my team is going to kill me, but if anyone that does want to join us tonight, if you do, awesome. If you don't, no problem. But if you do, we'll give you a list of 10 shows with the email addresses that you can contact for you specifically. So each person, if you want to join us tonight, that's what you get. Okay, that's a bonus that's not on here. Like I said, my team's going to kill me about that one. So it's not $9.97. It's only $97. So if you guys want to do that, it is this link here, and I will, once I'm done sharing my screen, I'll put it in the chat, the link, so it's easier for you to click if you want, but is the guest formula. So we're going to learn the super guest formula, exactly what to say, when to say it, how to say it on the interview as you're being interviewed. No matter what question the host asks you, you're going to learn to identify what shows on those listen notes platform, and we have a few other websites that are good. We'll learn how to list yourself as a guest and where to list yourself as a guest. And you'll get a pitch template that will teach you how to send that email out and what to say on that email so that you're connecting with the hosts, you're relating to them, and then you're offering them service and value of you being a host. So it's not all about you. I get lots of bad pitches, and we've really kind of figured out what works, what does not work. We do have a team that pitches people to shows as well, if that's ever something you want us to do for you.
Michelle, Robin would like to know, Randall would like to know, can you show the first set of links for podcast resources again?
Sure.
And Doc would like to know, how do I join your show tomorrow at 1 p.m.?
Perfect. I will drop all those links in the chat as soon as I stop sharing my screen. So Podcast Sales Machine is a second gift I want to give you, is a gift I want to give you guys. So if you want to join us, go and grab the Podcast Guest formula. That's awesome. It's $97. It's great. Second gift I want to give you guys is join us for a free 4-hour event. It's going to be October 24th. It's called Podcast Sales Machine Live. So you can just go there and register. And if you put the code IMPACT in there, you'll get a free VIP ticket. So the VIP ticket is going to include all sorts of other training on podcasting that are, some of it's about guesting, some of it's about having a show, but there's lots of great content there. And then what we talk about in the Sales Machine Live is how to create a funnel from your podcast as a host to creating money in your business. So how do you connect those two? We see a lot of people that have a podcast and they have a business, but they don't talk to each other. So we want to help you create together. My business partner, Evans, in this event, he was a part of a real estate podcast that grew to $1 million in sales of their online courses and programs from their podcast. And then they were able to sell that podcast for 6 figures as well. So join me there at the Podcast Sales Machine Live, and then connect with us on social media. Happy to connect with you guys and talk to you guys and join our Facebook group. So
Michelle, is the timing Pacific and is the money American or Canadian?
In the Podcast Guest formula is US dollars.
And the timing are the time show?
It's Canadian? 1 p.m. Pacific time, yeah. Okay.
And Candace asks, what is the code to put in again? I didn't hear it clearly.
IMPACT. IMPACT.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to go back to a couple of those slides for a second. So this is podcastsalesmachinelive.com. This is the one you want to go to get the free VIP ticket with the word impact for the 4-hour event in October. This was michellea.kartra.com/page/guest to join us at the podcast guest formula. I will put the link in the chat in a minute so that you guys can go directly there and click right on it. And this was the other question here, was the first. If you want to take a screenshot of this one, you're welcome to. So if you want to take a screenshot of that, that was the 7 places where podcasters search for guests. So that was the first one. And this was the second one. And you can just Google any of those, they'll show up. So Voice America, Reddit.com, Podit.net. And actually, I just got an email. Podit.net may not be there anymore, but podcastguest.com and Podbooker is another one that I like, and podmatch.com.
William is asking, is Podcast Guest formula tonight and at what time?
Oh, Podcast Guest formula is you can join anytime you like, and it's all there online.
Great. Okay.
I'm going to put some links in the chat for you guys right now so you have it all there.
Lovely. Michelle, thank you so much. You covered a huge amount of territory in an hour. Very well done. And you did so in a way that was extremely engaging. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I'm now going to stop recording, and then I'm going to segue into the second part of our meeting. So Michelle, on behalf of EIN's 80,000 members, I thank you to the moon and back.